name's Mark, and we're back for another episode of the Kung Fu Book Review. And today we are going to be looking at Complete Wing Chun, a bold claim, Complete Wing Chun, and then with the definitive guide to Wing Chun's history and traditions. And I got to say, it's bold, but they back it up, right? This is the best book about Wing Chun history that I've ever read, right? It blew my mind when I read it, because it made the amount of, I thought that I had a pretty good handle on what Wing Chun was, because I've trained with about 4 or 5 different people under several different lineages, right? And I was like, I was kind of getting to that point where, I've been training for quite a few years now, sort of 10, 11 years. And so this was a few years ago. And, my practice was getting a bit stale. I was much more interested in Xingyi, which I just sort of, picked up and was doing recently. That's where my passion was. And I picked up this book and it made me go, it made my jaw hit the floor. I was like, there's so much more Wing Chun out there, different lineages, different forms, different chi saos, all sorts of stuff. Because, the amount of stuff that I'd done is like that much, right? I covered that much when there's all this other stuff, all this other lineages, all these other, interesting bits of it that are in like Fujian province, Foshan, stuff that's over in Malaysia, Vietnam, and they all have, and they're all different, and they all look and feel quite different. Stuff that kind of fused with white crane and had different stances, stuff that was way more Shaolin-y, the red junk stuff that has completely different footwork, and it was just fascinating to read this book. So if you are doing Wing Chun, beyond the sort of Sean Rawcliffe, Simply Wing Chun books that are actually sort of technical, principle-led guides to help you improve your practice, I would very much recommend this book as sort of the next one, so especially if you've been practicing for a couple of years, like 3 or 4 years, and you really want to see what Wing Chun is, learn, really look at the history, and go into it in massive detail, then check out this book. So who is the author? So this is a work of deep love and a lot of time and effort has gone into this book, and there are 3 main authors, but they worked with a lot of other practitioners in all of their lineages to try and find out what their individual histories were. So one of the things is a lot of Chinese martial arts, right? It's actually a thing that I love about it, is that they're sort of mythological in their founding, right? Because Chinese history is long, and they also have this tradition of always claiming back to some mystical ancestor, right? Or somebody who created it, founded it. It wasn't me that just, sit there with my brain and figured out this stuff. It was this monk that I met on a mountain, or some general who was, defeating armies of Mongolians. He taught me, or a nun or whatever, So it's a nice feature of Chinese martial arts, right? But it means that you get all of these mythologization, and when the history goes back a little bit further, it all kind of blends into myth and legend. So these guys took a very interesting approach, which is that they didn't say this is this, right? They asked all the different practitioners to tell them their version of the history, and then they recount that, right? So they tell the story as it was told to them. And so, you can see that there's quite a lot of different ones that kind of, contradict each other and have different origins and all that kind of thing. But they're like, that's fine. We're not going to try and fix that, right? We're just going to, pass on the tradition as each of the different lineages and styles and groups tell it, right? Which I think is a very mature attitude to take. Anyway, let's talk. So we've got this guy, he's the main guy. So Robert Chu. So because he came from a different lineage, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the, I need to just make sure that I'm doing the right bit. Yeah, so Robert Chu had done the Yip Man style, but then also was involved in a couple of other styles like Hawkins Cheng, and also he'd done a bunch of other stuff. So he'd done Tai Chi and Xingyi and White Crane. So he was kind of this experienced martial artist who unlike some of the Western practitioners of Wing Chun, they're like, this is the only kung fu that they've seen. You know, these guys, they understand that, you know, different people, they train together, they mix the styles, they see a technique that's like, oh, that's interesting, I think I'll poach that and put that in my form. And, you know, or even as a credit to another martial artist. So if they meet and train with another martial artist and he's got some skill that you don't have, you might insert a movement into your form to honor this other guy, to, you know, sort of a little backhanded compliment. You're like, oh, that was pretty cool, I'm going to put this, you know, this. So the styles that are in Fujam, they often have these hooking white crane movements, and that's because they've trained with white crane practitioners. They're like, that's really cool, I like, you know, when he did that move on me, that really works, so I'm going to stick it in my Sulam Tao. So the authors met this guy, and then they went around and they traveled all around southern China and trained with a bunch of different people, met all these different lineages, and then realized that Wing Chun is so much more diverse than they first thought. And then it became an ongoing project for them. So I'd say the main architect is this guy, Robert Chu, who's like fantastic, very varied, interesting martial artist by the sound of it. I've never trained with him or any of his guys, but you know, man after my own heart, because he's obviously curious and interested, and because he's done Xingyi and Bagua as well as Wing Chun and White Crane. So he wants to see what's out there, right, rather than the kind of very closed door approach. So, and yeah, he met up with these other couple of guys, Rennie Ritchie and Wu, so who I don't really know much about, but they and then they kind of travelled around and met all these different authors. So just as a general point, the quality of the production of this book is excellent. It contains one of the best and most comprehensive glossaries of Wing Chun and you know, Cantonese martial arts terms that I've ever seen. So the glossary in itself is just amazing, right? And it's, you know, 15-20 pages of these, and they're all done correctly. So if you see, so you get a pronunciation guide, the non-simplified characters, so the traditional character, and then you get so you get it how it would be sort of pinionized, but then also a sort of westernized pronunciation guide as well, and in English if there is a good translation. So spot on, right? So and this is throughout the entire book. So the table of contents is very well and technically presented, just like you might have in an academic history book. And I would say that would be the only weakness of this book, is that it is, if you're not a passionate Wing Chun person, it is like the academic history of Wing Chun. So it is presented in a technical and rigorous manner. So, you know, you get detail forward, lots of acknowledgements, an introduction that focuses on how they were going to present it, you know, so they have a methodology about how they are actually going to present the information, which I discussed a little bit about. Like, they're just going to present the stories as they come back. They're going to talk a little bit about the genealogy. They're just going to combine the genealogy from all the different people. And again, it's got one of the best lineage charts that I've seen. So one of the most comprehensive lineage charts for Wing Chun in the appendices as well. No focus on a particular line, just everyone who said that this guy trained with this guy and they found some evidence for it, they included it in the lineage chart. So yeah, brilliant, excellent book. In terms of all of its design and typography and quality of production values. So yeah, after that, then only the first 30 pages. So the vast majority of Wing Chun in the West is Yip Man Wing Chun, right? So this guy, yeah, lots of movies about him these days, and you know, he's the guy that popularized it and really sort of first started teaching Westerners in his school, and his students started really teaching a lot of Westerners. One of my lineage guy, they got Wan Chun Leong, so that's most of the guys that the first couple of guys that I trained with followed the Wan Chun Leong lineage. So famous Hong Kong street brawler, yeah, I've always got, you know, lots of punching, lots of fighting, you know, as soon as you could do double sticky hands. It's just like, let's go, you know, 2-hour classes of just fighting. So yeah, so that's what my introduction to Wing Chun was, and you know, for a lot of people that's all the Wing Chun that they know, right? But it is only a tiny, tiny part of Wing Chun, as you'll see. So then he goes on to Yun Kei San Wing Chun, which I'd never, is this chap. Don't know anything about. Really fascinating to find out about, and the forms are quite different. I'd say it's reasonably similar, but there's a few extra movements and interesting things in there. And then this is maybe what started the whole thing, because Robert Chu trained with this guy, the Gu Lao Wing Chun, and it's really different, so you've got all these like phoenix knuckle fists, double punches, low crossing leg stances, and sort of an 8 posture form that's, and when I read that, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Like it's kind of like a Chow Gari type of Wing Chun, like Southern Foshan, stuff, but also high leg kicks, to the head and stuff, which is like in Yip Man Wing Chun, you just don't have any of that. Then you've got the Nanyang lineage, so basically they just go through each of these different ones, right? And they sort of start off more and more familiar, but by the time you get to the end, there's stuff that I'd never even heard of, right? So because they've got like stuff in Malaysia, Vietnam, and all these other branches, some of which they only have 1 or 2 lines about. And then at the end, they do get a little bit, they say, okay, we've presented all the information, we've talked to the people, we've got evidence where we've got it about who trained who, and we've got the stories and the mythology from each of these branches, but we're going to try and make a few academic conclusions about what we think happened. And I think they do that in a very, reasonable and evidence-based approach, which doesn't really upset or offend anyone. Overall, the best possible book for learning about the lineage and history of Wing Chun. And for me, like, who's somebody who's been doing it for a while, it re-inspired my curiosity and passion for this art. So to the authors, I say, well done, sirs. You've done an excellent job. And I'm really glad that something like this exists. I hope that they continue, and maybe there'll be a few updates in the years to come, and they'll flesh out some of the stuff about Malaysian and Vietnamese Wing Chun a little bit more, and some of the other weirder branches, because this is a work of deep love and affection that is also produced to the highest standards and quality. So if you are a Wing Chun practitioner, get this book, especially if you've been practicing for a few years, because it'll teach you so much about what's out there, and hopefully inspire you to go and broaden your Wing Chun horizons. Good. Thank you very much for your time. Best of luck with all of your training, and maybe some lockdown reading as well. I hope that everything is going well. As I mentioned before, I've got a new video series coming soon, 30-day Qigong journey. I don't really want to call it a challenge. It's not a challenge. It's a chance to do some internal work, because at least in the UK here, we're stuck inside for a bit longer, and with new rules, and we can't go out and train. So now is the time to cultivate within. So please check that out as well. Please like, share, and subscribe as always, and best of luck with your practice, everyone.